They smiled on stage for decades, but behind the scenes, Donny and Marie Osmond were falling apart. By 2019, after 11 years of their Las Vegas show, they couldn't even take photos together. Meet and greets were separate. Promotional materials shot individually. What the public never saw? The lawsuit that exposed everything. Accusations of greed, manipulation, and betrayal that tore apart America's most famous brother-sister duo. This is the story of how America's favorite siblings became strangers. Marie Osmond was born on October 13, 1959, in Ogden, Utah. She was the 8th of 9 children and the only girl in a house full of boys. But Marie's early years were different. While the boys practiced and performed, she stayed home with her mother. Music was always in the background, part of daily life. Marie once said she couldn't remember a single day of childhood without music playing or being practiced. Even though she wasn't performing yet, the music soaked in. She had a special bond with Donnie. They were always together, playing, laughing, and sometimes driving their mother crazy with their wild energy. The Osmond story, though, began with a painful twist. The first 2 children, Verl and Tom, were born with serious hearing problems. Doctors warned George and Olive Osmond not to have more kids. They even told them to send the boys to an institution, but Olive refused. She believed in something stronger than doctors, her faith. She homeschooled her sons and chose to keep growing her family. That decision brought 7 more children into the world, all of them with normal hearing. Ironically, it was Verl and Tom's hearing issues that pushed the family into showbiz. The boys started performing in 1958 to help raise money for hearing aids. What began as a necessity soon grew into something much bigger. Their father, George, ran the house like a drill sergeant. He had served in the United States Army and brought that same discipline home. Mornings started with réveillé on a bugle. Meals were announced with military-style sound-offs. If you were disrespectful, you got a spanking. But George's strictness wasn't without love. Donnie recalled those early years as full of laughter. Despite the rules, George expected perfection, not just in behavior, but in their performances too. Every move, every note had to be flawless. The family business began small, with local church performances. Alan was just 8 when he started. Jay was only 2. A lucky encounter at Disneyland in the late 50s changed everything. The boys were spotted singing on Main Street, and soon they were invited to appear on national TV. They joined the Andy Williams Show, and little Donnie made his debut singing "You Are My Sunshine" at just 5 years old. Their success grew fast, but it came at a cost. Rehearsals replaced school. Touring took over childhood, but it worked. Financially, they thrived. At 13, Marie took a chance. She recorded a demo of Dolly Parton's "Coat of Many Colors." MGM Records liked what they heard and signed her immediately. She flew to Nashville and, in her first session, recorded 9 songs. Her focus and preparation amazed everyone. This was the beginning of her solo career. In 1973, when she was just 14, Paper Roses came out. It was an instant hit. #1 on the United States country chart, #5 on the pop chart, #2 in the UK. She became the youngest female country artist to debut at #1 in the United States. Her album followed and topped the country charts, proving she wasn't just a one-hit wonder. Marie followed that with more hits. "In My Little Corner of the World" and "Who's Sorry Now?" Then came the duet era. She and Donnie teamed up for "I'm Leaving It All Up to You," which did well, and they kept recording together. Hits like "Morning Side of the Mountain" and "Deep Purple" kept them in the charts. Meanwhile, when Donnie recorded "One Bad Apple" at age 12, something clicked. He stopped singing like a robot and started thinking like a musician. For the first time, he wasn't just repeating lines, he was feeling them. That small shift would turn him from a cute kid on stage into a serious artist. And that's when the chaos really began. By the early 1970s, Donnie wasn't just famous. He was a full-blown teen idol. What people called Osmond mania hit especially hard in the UK. Girls screamed his name, chased his car, mobbed hotels, and packed every venue he visited. It was so intense that Donnie once had to hide under a restaurant table just to escape a stampede of fans. In 1973 alone, The Osmonds had 13 songs charting in the UK. It wasn't hype, it was hysteria. His concerts were so loud that the music got drowned out by screams. He even remembered playing in Nashville, where the fans were so loud it felt like the sound could crack the walls. Teen magazines couldn't get enough of him either. His face was everywhere, from Tiger Beat to 16. Girls adored him, and their brothers resented him. That mix of love and hate shaped Donnie's life in ways most people never saw. While his fans screamed with love, the critics sharpened their knives. At just 15, Donnie faced one of the harshest reviews in music history. Rolling Stone magazine said the worst day in rock was the day he was born. He never forgot it. He was still a kid, trying to figure out who he was, and suddenly, the biggest music magazine in the world was calling his very existence a mistake. It crushed him. Later, he called it the worst kind of bullying. It didn't stop there. In the 1980s, his name became a punchline in the music industry. When guitarist Phil Collen of Def Leppard played on Donnie's album, his name had to be removed from the credits because no one wanted to be linked to him. Even after sold-out shows, newspapers tore him down the next day. That kind of contrast, cheers at night, insults in the morning, left scars that didn't fade easily. But the damage wasn't just emotional, it got physical too. One night in Manchester, Donnie was walking into a hotel when a fan rushed him. She held a pen and an autograph book and came at him with full force. She didn't mean harm. She just wanted a moment with her idol. But when she hugged him, the pen jabbed straight into his eye. And right then, a camera flash went off. The light burned into his already damaged eye and left a permanent mark on his retina. He almost lost his sight. Donnie still thinks about it to this day. The scar is still there, a reminder of how fame can swing from love to danger in a heartbeat. Yet, instead of blaming the girl, he showed compassion. She didn't know, he said. She was just overwhelmed. Meanwhile, Marie's journey was also fraught with challenges. When she was just 15, she was already a star on the hit show Donny and Marie. But behind the bright lights and smiling performances, something much darker was happening. The people who ran the studio weren't just strict, they were cruel. Marie was already thin, weighing only 103 pounds, but they told her she was too fat. One day, they took her to a parking lot and gave her a brutal choice: lose 10 pounds or the show gets canceled. They didn't stop there. They told her she was an embarrassment to her family, that she should stop stuffing food into her fat face. It wasn't just criticism. It was mental torture. Desperate to keep her job, Marie started starving herself. Sometimes she wouldn't eat for 3 days before filming. Other times, she only drank lemon water mixed with cayenne pepper and maple syrup just to stay under 93 pounds. It wasn't healthy, and it wasn't safe, but she felt trapped. That pressure stayed with her for years. She went through cycle after cycle of yo-yo dieting, trying every diet she could find. It took decades before she finally understood what had happened to her. It wasn't just pressure, it was abuse, and it left deep scars. But that wasn't the only trauma she carried. Long before the cameras and the fame, Marie was hiding another painful secret. At just 8 or 9 years old, she was sexually abused by people her parents trusted. The abuse was so intense, it completely changed how she saw men. They made her feel sick. She couldn't trust them. She didn't even know how to be around them. That confusion made her question everything, including her own identity. She started wondering if she might be gay, not because of desire, but because the abuse had broken her ability to understand what she was feeling. Marie first opened up about this in her memoir, and later on, The Talk. Her voice shook as she spoke, but she was finally ready to share the truth. Healing took time, a lot of it. And even though the abuse didn't come from her family, it was the good men in her life, her brothers and her father, who helped her begin to trust again. They showed her that not all men were cruel or dangerous. Slowly, she started to rebuild. Through all that pain, she still tried to find love. As a young star, she dated Andy Gibb. I'm the youngest brother from the Bee Gees. He was charming and talented, but drugs took hold of him. Marie watched helplessly as his health declined, and in the end, she had to walk away. It broke her heart. Later, she also confirmed dating Eric Estrada, the TV star from Chips. though she never talked much about that chapter. Marriage wasn't easy either. She married Stephen Craig in 1982, but it didn't last. They divorced 3 years later. In 1986, she married music producer Brian Blosel. They had 7 children together, but the relationship had its own struggles. In 1998, while battling postpartum depression, they separated. By 2007, they were officially divorced. Looking back, Marie admitted that she had rushed into the relationship before fully understanding herself. Then, something unexpected happened. After decades apart, she reunited with her first husband, Stephen Craig. This time, things were different. They both had changed, and somehow, they made it work. In 1974, Donnie and his sister Marie recorded "I'm Leaving It All Up to You." It wasn't a new song, but their version hit different. It had a soft country pop feel, and it quickly climbed the charts, reaching number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 1 on the Adult Contemporary chart. That one single, backed with the Umbrella song, didn't just become a hit. It became the key that opened the door to TV stardom. Their chemistry was undeniable, and it didn't go unnoticed. In 1975, they got a chance to guest host The Mike Douglas Show for a week. Fred Silverman, the president of ABC-TV, happened to be watching. He saw something special in them, something fresh, charming, and family-friendly. He took a risk and offered the teenage duo their very own primetime variety show. Donnie was only 18. Marie was just 16. No one that young had ever hosted a variety show before. It was bold, but it worked. When Donnie and Marie premiered in January 1976, it drew around 14 million viewers a week. The show quickly became a hit, first filmed in Los Angeles, but later moved to the Osmond family's studio in Utah. That move came after they fought for more creative control. But while they were winning on screen, things behind the scenes weren't so glamorous. Marie, still a teenager, was put under intense pressure to look a certain way. Producers constantly criticized her weight, calling her an embarrassment, and even threatening the jobs of other cast and crew if she didn't slim down. One producer told her he was just trying to help with her poor eating habits. The pressure drove her into dangerous habits, sometimes eating nothing for days except water mixed with lemon juice, cayenne pepper, and maple syrup. She got so weak, she could barely get through the dance numbers. In her own words, she felt like the ugly duckling, especially when standing next to glamorous guest stars. While the show thrived in the public eye, the family's finances were secretly falling apart. Years later, Jimmy Osmond revealed they had lost between $80 to $100 million because of horrible financial decisions. They had trusted advisors who mismanaged everything. The family had pooled their money, thinking it would protect them, but it nearly destroyed them. Their father, George, had tried to secure their future by investing in various businesses, but many of those deals flopped. The only thing that saved them from total collapse was real estate. George had made sure they owned some property, and selling those helped cover their debts when everything else crumbled. The final blow came from something far more personal: Donnie's love life. On May 8, 1978, he married Deborah Glenn, but he didn't announce it for 3 years. He knew what it would do to his image. Teenage girls around the world saw Donnie as their dream guy, and once they found out he was married, the obsession started to fade. Ratings dropped. The show scrambled to stay alive, cutting popular segments, adding disco numbers, even changing the show's name to The Osmond Family Show, but the magic was gone. When the show ended in May 1979, it wasn't the sibling duo who decided to pull the plug, it was the network. After their variety show ended in 1979, Donny Osmond's career fell apart almost overnight. He had been one of the biggest teen idols in the world, but suddenly, no one wanted to play his music. Radio stations ignored him. Record labels weren't interested. He had more top 40 hits than Michael Jackson by 1978, but none of that mattered anymore. Donnie later admitted he felt like a prisoner of his own past. He was seen as uncool, stuck in his teen image. That pressure stayed with him. By the mid-1990s, the stress turned into something darker, crippling panic attacks. He was eventually diagnosed with social anxiety disorder. He said there were moments before going on stage when he would have rather died than perform. His wife Debbie once rushed him to the hospital after he shook uncontrollably in bed. His sister Marie saw it all. She remembered how, back in the 70s, Donnie would sit alone in his dressing room struggling just to hold himself together. Still, he kept going. From 1992 to 1998, Donnie played the lead in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat over 2,000 times across the United States and Canada. In 1999, they even made a film version with Joan Collins and Richard Attenborough. The role revived his career, but it also pushed his anxiety to the limit. The stress of performing every night was brutal. Once, during a show in Las Vegas, Donnie was so sick he could barely stand. He pushed through the performance anyway. As the curtain came down, he collapsed. Stagehands had to carry him off. His costume offered almost no protection, and he often performed alongside children, making him even more vulnerable to illness. One thing helped him shift his mindset: a conversation with director Stephen Pimlott. Pimlott told him, "The theater is a place where people come to dream in public, and you are in charge of that dream." That idea gave Donnie something to hold on to. In December 2024, he'll return to the stage, this time playing the Pharaoh instead of Joseph. While Donnie was trying to rebuild, Marie was quietly making her own comeback. After their show ended, she struggled too. But in the mid-1980s, she returned to country music. It was a smart move. A Nashville executive named Jim Fogelsong signed her to Capitol Records and teamed her up with Dan Seals. Their duet, "Meet Me in Montana," became a #1 hit in the United States and cracked the top 20 in Canada. It also won them Vocal Duo of the Year at the CMA Awards. Then came "There's No Stopping Your Heart," another #1 hit. That album put her back on the map. The single "Read My Lips" made the top 5. Her next album, "I Only Wanted You," spent 37 weeks on the country charts and produced another #1 duet, "You're Still New to Me," this time with Paul Davis. Marie's revival earned her an ACM nomination for Top Female Vocalist, and even a Grammy nod for her duet with Dan Seals. She was back, and this time, she was leading the charge. In 1998, TV legend Dick Clark came up with an idea. He wanted to bring Donnie and Marie back as daytime talk show hosts. Both of them were hesitant. They knew it could drag them back into the same image they had fought to escape. Still, they agreed. The new Donnie and Marie show launched in September 1998. It had big-name producers, a live house band, and plenty of buzz. But the ratings didn't follow. Even though the siblings were nominated for Daytime Emmys in 2000 and 2001, the show was canceled after 2 seasons. It was a second failed attempt to revive their 70s magic, but not all was lost. A decade later, Donnie and Marie began a 6-week Las Vegas residency at the Flamingo. It was supposed to be short-term. Instead, it lasted 11 years, ending in 2019. It became one of the most successful stages of their careers. When Marie's music career slowed down again in the late 80s, she found a new passion: dolls. She had grown up with 8 brothers, and dolls were her escape. Her mother, Olive, made sure Marie had her own little world. By the 1990s, Marie had nearly 700 dolls, collected from all over the world. Then came an offer from the LL Knickerbocker Company to sell dolls on QVC. Marie agreed, but only if she could be fully involved. She didn't want to slap her name on something she didn't believe in. That decision paid off. She helped design nearly 200 dolls. The business was so successful that she and her husband bought the company and renamed it Marion. One of her most treasured creations was the Olive May doll, sculpted by Marie herself and named after her mother. It sat in Olive's curio cabinet until she passed. After that, Marie gave it to her niece, Sarah Elizabeth, a nurse who had cared for Olive in her final year. It wasn't just a business. It was personal. Marie Osmond always seemed like the picture of strength, smiling on stage, full of energy, and always next to her brother Donnie. But behind that image was a woman carrying more pain than most people ever knew. After giving birth to her 7th child, Matthew, in 1999, Marie fell into a deep depression. She was 40. Her talk show had just been renewed, and she had moved her family to Los Angeles. Everything looked perfect, but inside, she was falling apart. One day, unable to cope, she handed her baby to the nanny and drove 250 miles up the coast to a motel. Alone and afraid, she realized she finally understood how someone could think about ending their life. That moment was the start of a long journey through postpartum depression. Her mother's unexpected confession that she had also gone through it was the first step toward healing. For 5 months, Marie kept it hidden, hoping it would pass, but it didn't. It took courage and help to get better. Just over a decade later, her world shattered again. In 2010, her 18-year-old son, Michael, died by suicide, jumping from the 8th floor of his Los Angeles apartment. He had changed his last name to Brian and struggled with depression, especially after Marie's divorce from Brian Blosel in 2007. Michael had been through rehab. He was trying. The day before he died, he told Marie he felt alone and had no friends. She told him she'd be there on Monday, but depression doesn't wait. Toxicology reports later showed no drugs or alcohol in his system. He had been sober and, as Marie revealed later, had been bullied because of it. She never named those who hurt him. She just carried the pain. She still does. When she returned to work just a week after Michael's funeral, critics attacked her. People accused her of being heartless. But Marie had a reason. She said she needed to show her other children how to keep living, that they couldn't all die with Michael. It wasn't easy. Her kids didn't want to go to school, but she told them, "We choose life." Mike would have wanted that. The backlash didn't stop there. In 2019, when her daughter Jessica married her wife, people shamed Marie for supporting her. She stood firm. "You should never shame anyone," she said, "especially for loving your child." Despite all the pain, Marie kept working. In 2008, she and Donnie signed what was supposed to be a short 6-week residency in Las Vegas. It lasted 11 years. Together, they performed 1,730 shows and brought in nearly 1 million fans. Their residency became the longest-running act of its kind on the Strip. In 2013, the Flamingo even renamed the showroom after them. Behind the scenes, though, the workload was brutal. Marie injured her knee during a show but kept performing in a brace. Her muscles hurt so badly after rehearsals that she had to crawl up the stairs at home. She joked on live TV that Donnie was getting old at 61. But truthfully, the physical toll was hitting them both. They looked close on stage, but off stage, their lives were separate. Marie was a single mom with 8 kids. Las Vegas gave her structure. It helped her rebuild after Michael's death. Donnie focused on other projects and had his own team, his own dressing room. Rumors of a feud followed them everywhere, but Marie laughed them off. "We get angry every day. We're siblings." Still, tensions simmered. Their act was split to fit their different styles. Donnie leaned into pop and theater. Marie leaned into the country. Rehearsals were long, and creative differences popped up often, but the show kept growing. What started as 6 weeks turned into 11 years. They kept extending the deal. The money was too good. The demand is too high. At one point, their faces were plastered across the Flamingo's building. Tickets for their final shows went for thousands, but the cracks became harder to hide. In 2018, fans noticed the promotional photos for the show were taken separately. Even the meet and greets were split. You could meet Donnie or Marie, never both. Insiders whispered that they barely spoke off stage. Then came a lawsuit. Their producer accused Donnie of trying to cut him and their agency out of the profits. The suit painted Donnie as manipulative and greedy. Marie was named too, accused of staying silent. It was ugly, and it revealed just how strained things had become. In 2013, Marie tried to branch out with her own talk show on the Hallmark Channel. It was canceled after 1 season. She had hoped it would be her big break away from Donnie. Instead, it became another blow during a painful chapter in her life. She was still dealing with Michael's death, still raising kids, still tied to their Vegas show. According to some, that disappointment only made things worse between her and Donnie. When they finally announced the end of their residency in 2019, they tried to keep things light. "We're just moving on to solo projects," they said. But by early 2023, reports claimed Marie had refused to ever perform with Donnie again. At their last show, They hugged and cried. Marie said, "I'll see you at Christmas." But that farewell was more than just a goodbye to a show. It felt like the end of something deeper. Marie Osmond has lived through loss, pressure, heartbreak, and public judgment. Yet, she always returned to the stage, to her children, to the spotlight. Not because it was easy, but because she believed in choosing life, again and again.